And now we're seeing the middle class becoming the working poor. Law, which all of us must abide by, and that is kindness. We've got a lie enshrined in law. It will be changed, not yet. So we're tolerating a lie in law, and all is good. And the police are still following that law? Do we absolutely need an AK-47 to feel like a strong, free human being? No, we don't. We are different. We are Australian. This is not who we are. And we should come together as a people of Australia and not as vassal state to the US. We're not teaching children to actually use their brains. The university was a place for actually allowing the brain to discover. It's incumbent upon us as a people to become very AI aware and to take charge of the AI in our lives. I would say the following. If we wanted to address the institutionalized poverty of our state, the first thing we should stop doing as a state is taxing people unnecessarily.
Before we get started, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode of our cutting-edge contemporary conversations. Thank you.
Welcome, Brian. How are you?
Thank you. I'm well.
Oh, what a conversation we are having continually before the camera started rolling. It'll be interesting to talk to you in terms of the whole spectrum of philosophies you bring to the table. But before I want to dive into the liberties, freedoms, and all those interesting conversations, could I ask you to give me a brief backdrop or background of yours, and then help the audience understand the breadth of travels you have done and the breadth of movement you had in your life?
Well, apart from the fact that I'm a medical practitioner, GP, and a member of Parliament in the upper house, people don't really see who I really am. I was born in Malaysia. Scottish parents, and the first 15 years of my life I spent around about equal times in Scotland, Malaysia, and Germany, and Australia. I left here rather than going to I was going to volunteer, but my folks had been to war. They thought, no, you don't know what it's like. And so they went back to Scotland. They were having a hard time after my father was forced out of Malaysia. And so back in Scotland, went to medical school there and realised, no, I'm not happy here. So I went to Germany, many years in Germany. Spoke almost exclusively German, went to the Soviet Union because I could see, I'd reached the pinnacle of my career as a medical practitioner in Germany. And the Soviet Union, of course, I was strange country, that, a wonderful place, wonderful people, very different situation. And so lived there for a year until the coup happened. Ended up back in the UK and left there as soon as I could back to Hong Kong. I got off the plane in Hong Kong. I thought, I smelled the nulla and I smelled the foods cooking. I said, I'm home. It was quite strange. And 12 years in Hong Kong, and my wife says to me, it's about time you settle down, like my Chinese wife. So I came back to Perth in Australia. So yes, my accent is a bit strange. It's usually Scottish, a little bit of German in there, a tad, it's a bit of Edinburgh and a bit of Western Isles.
But you can code switch.
I can actually, yes. I could hold this conversation in German if you wanted. I used to lecture in Russian, but I couldn't do that anymore now.
That's fun. From being a medical practitioner, which is mostly it's black and white, and there is grey, and whereas politics is purely grey, not that much black and white. So how do you see that kind of a mindset or psyche of understanding to different way of thinking or working or operating, or they are same?
That's a really interesting question. I think the premise is wrong, actually. Medicine is not black and white at all. It's mostly grey. Most of medicine is not actually evidence-based. And it's an evolving science. It should be an art, and it's been forced into this box-ticking approach of one size fits all. It's a diagnosis, it's a treatment, next patient, please. The very foundation of our health system is actually based on sickness. And I detest that. In Germany, I was very much focused on wellness and finding the underlying root cause of disease. Fix this, and all the symptoms vanish. And it's fundamentalist, but it's probably valid. Politics is fascinating because it's the art of making the impossible possible, I'd imagine. And if you ask 100 people what the solution is going to be for any particular problem, let's say refugees, let's say housing, you're going to find such a variety of options. And all of them, they think, are firmly held beliefs that they're right. How do we manage? And of course, if you've got one particular belief and you've got friends in Kununurra and friends in Albany, different solutions are needed. So it's very similar to medicine. In fact, the same issues happen. All of the problems we've got up here, we're trying to deliver with the budget, actually have got fundamental underlying causes which are not being addressed. And don't address these, the costs increase for this. And that, I think, is the situation we have in our politics. So I see a very great similarity. Diagnosing the underlying cause and prescribing a remedy is really where we ought to be.
And that's a good segue into what do you think are the core underlying causes of the problems we are seeing in terms of, homelessness? These are the effects on the one side, but what are the underlying causes you might see in terms of cost of living as an effect? What are the causes you are observing?
There's so many fundamentals we could look at, but I think the underlying fundamental of fundamentals is the clinging on to, first of all, status quo thinking, and that's underpinned by the civil service. There shall be no changes, all ministers that wise. This is people might get the wrong impression type of stuff. But the civil service and indeed the government is beholden to the neoliberal philosophies, which I think first began to gain credence in the 1930s and certainly in the 1970s in the US in particular. And the neoliberal philosophy gives us the idea that we work harder to get richer, but in fact what we're doing is we're making the rich people very rich, and now we're seeing the middle class becoming the working poor, at least within Australia and worldwide too, because we are working hard for the businesses owned by the ultra-wealthy and indeed the transnational corporations, which leaves us working harder than ever before with less money in our pockets than ever before. And so if we were to fix that underlying problem, then I think we'd actually be a lot better off. For example, the taxation system. We pay a lot of tax in this country because we need to supply the resources to look after our population. And the transnational companies are paying often little or no tax. And they're taking our resources and selling them abroad at great profit, and we are not actually benefiting. We've got a very rich country in Australia, very rich country, but we have so much poverty here, so much hardship, because we haven't organised the country to serve the people. It's serving transnationals. So the neoliberal philosophies. I think everything would actually devolve to this underlying understanding that we are actually, if you like, serfs. So, I wouldn't say slaves, but we're certainly beholden to the transnationals. And it goes even further that we as a country, Australia, is basically a vassal state to the US. And when the US says jump, we ask how high. And I think this is greatly harmed every single one of us in Australia.
If one has to look through the history of federation, and it's more than a millennia, how do you see the evolution of, as a young country to a mature country, to, as you talk about, we are a vessel for the US, how do you see that changing or has evolved, that mindset, through economics, through defense, through decision-making, through working together as allies? What do you see the challenges there, or what are the key factors?
It really starts with the mindset, with the way people think. Actions, I think, devolve upon our basic underpinnings of our understandings, our thoughts, what we think is normal. And in Australia, we've always looked up to Big Brother. In the early days, it was the mother country. War is here, how many Australians will be sent to the front lines? Same thing was true, I think, in the Second World War, but then, of course, the UK very much lost power, and what took power was the United States. And we, of course, shifted from a mother country, Britain, to a big brother in the United States of America. And everything then depended upon what the Americans did for us. We would help. That's why we went into Vietnam and other things as well. And we've committed to serving the American needs, because that way we profit. We export there and we find markets within the Western world reassured by American might. This is, I think, true of all smaller and weaker countries. You try and find someone to protect you, like the bullies in the schoolyard. You look up who's going to protect me and keep me safe when other people are being mean to me. If you look at the history of the world over, say, 4,000 years, there's a lovely book, Red Tide, is it? It's a mathematical look at how societies, how empires rise and indeed fall. And there's an equation you can set there. When you have this and this and this and this is in place, then this is going to happen. Mathematical. And what this equation says right now is that we are headed for a collapse. And in specifics, it's going to be the United States. All the ingredients are there for a collapse of the empire. And this is the rise and fall of empires throughout the generations. And that's where we're at now. And with that comes the geopolitical upheavals. Who's going to find out where? There's like earthquakes is happening in the political world. Who's going to be with me? Who's going to be against me? And I think the basic problem we're facing, maybe there's no answer to that, but the basic problem we're facing is it comes back to ourselves individually, but also as a worldwide population. Am I prepared to put aside all of the regulations, all of the laws, all of the norms of society, and return to one fundamental law which all of us must abide by, and that is kindness? If I show kindness to others, if I show kindness to myself, will I need all this legislation? And the answer is no. It's an underlying fundamental. You could say it's like the fundamental energy of love in the world. If we're not showing love and kindness, if we're always looking for ways of actually getting an edge on someone else, then we're going to be competitive. I beat you. I've got more money than you. My house is bigger than yours. My country is stronger than yours. You do what I tell you. That arises from the fundamental misunderstanding that we're all one people. We're all one. We're all from the same stock. We're all human. And anything that harms you harms me.
And bringing that, the new idea of neoliberal philosophies you talked about, how will that mindset as an individual mindset, because the philosophies are broadly done at a corporate or an organizational level or a country level or a state level, but how do you see those mindsets, or what are the values or human values, as you talked about, love? Beyond that, what are the things that are more important to every individual who are putting their vote to you? What are the core values for them?
You ask some interesting questions. And it assumes we've all got similar values, and we don't. There's a concept there of value levels, which very much devolve or evolve from the position in which our society finds itself. It's not really easy to talk about level one, where it's basically roaming the savannah or the jungle looking for food with a small family structure. But once you get together, you've got actually a tribal structure, which has got a chief, and you've got people who must obey what the chief says. You move on to something a bit more than that, and then you get the what's his name, Andrew Wake, is it, the nasty man who thinks that being a Andrew Tate. Yeah. He's a classical level 3. Look at the bling I've got. Look at how powerful I am, and I'm better than you. I'm an alpha male. Very primitive, really. Level 4, you can see that there's understandings there of actually following a structure, often with a book. In fact, usually, if you've got a book of laws, I will abide by these laws because they've been given to me by the government, by God, by someone I respect. So these laws I live by, and you must live by them too, because they're right. Once you evolve beyond that into level 5, you can accept the book, but maybe not everything it says. Maybe we ought not to do everything. Like if you have mixed fibers in your clothes, maybe I ought not to kill you. It's the Old Testament. And so level 6 is going on to the more of the spiritual side here, the understanding of the fundamental nature we've got. Now, is any one of these levels good or bad? No, they're all good. And they've all got bad points as well. It's this understanding that our levels are there. We can say, what are your levels? Your values, honesty, trust, truth, this kind of thing. I think we can all agree with those, but values are a lot more than that. They're fundamental underlying beliefs which make the very nature of who we are. And the levels of someone who's struggling to survive, for example, in Gaza, is very different from someone who's actually struggling to survive in New York. The same struggles, if you like, but very different understandings of what's going on. So we're going to behave differently. So with that in mind, the question is, how can we as a world come together to help each other to come into an ever-evolving civilization? That is an interesting question. And that's basically down to how can we help each other to become the best you can be in this life, and how may I be of service to you?
As you said, at a level 3 or level 4, the book of laws come. And the laws, when they are done in good faith, and then everybody abides, and it's more structural and creates some kind of system. But when does that bell curve of the laws trip over to not everything what is legal is good?
Oh, I
so it
love
doesn't mean that there's a law about this, which means it is right. So what are the metrics? How do you define a law or legislation, good or bad or ugly?
I like very much the example of law not being good. Law simply is. There was a law in 1571 in England which said that if you are a working class, you must wear a woolen hat on Sundays and public holidays, or you get a fine. Why? Who thought that one up? We've got similar ones here, that if it's Good Friday, you shall not sell alcohol. How about in 1981, if you were gay, the penalty for being gay was a maximum 21 years in prison? Yeah? I mean, so the question here about law is also context related. 1930s, it was legal then to assault or maybe even kill a Jew. That's not morally right, but the law was okay. Roland Heisler, the nasty judge, could sentence people to death for having a different opinion. And he's following the law at the time, but it was certainly a wrong law. The laws we've got right now in our great country, are they good or are they bad? My political party is the legalized cannabis party. You think, where are my dreadlocks? Why am I not smoking cannabis? The thing about this is, cannabis for me is a symbol of all the ways that government has lied to us over the millennia. They're saying cannabis is a dangerous narcotic. Well, A, it's not a narcotic. B, it's not dangerous. Is it useful to have? Well, generally, it's a very useful medicine. We've used it for hundreds of years, very successfully. Can you misuse it? Yes, you can. Should we then ban it? No. So the law banning it is totally wrong. For example, we have a law right now which says if I prescribe medicinal cannabis to you for your insomnia, and you drive and you test positive for THC, even though you're not impaired, and you won't be, you're deemed to be impaired, therefore your license is taken off you. Then you can't go to the US on a holiday because you're called a drug user. Because you've used a medicine correctly. Now, who says that the presence of THC deems you impaired? It's completely wrong. Now, we know this, the police know this, the government knows this too, but it's still in the law. We've got a lie enshrined in law. It will be changed, not yet. So we're tolerating a lie in law, and all is good. And the police are still following that law. What else are they doing to actually cause us harm? For example, 60% of the children in the parts of the Kimberley have fetal alcohol syndrome because the mothers have access to alcohol and the children are badly damaged. It's a multi-billion-dollar cost to our community. And we tolerate that because, you must have alcohol, it's a human right. But no, you can't have cannabis, even though it'll give much better outcomes. This is a law and it's wrong.
And there's a fine balance between what, as a government, you control, which means you have to define the guardrails, and on the other side, freedoms or liberties. And these are individual liberties and individual freedoms. So what's a fine balance, or what's an unfine balance? If you can take some examples to argue the both sides.
Hold that to me, would you? One of my staffers, a very erudite man, he said, the definition of government is that it should regulate companies and keep the population safe. What happens now is that the governments keep companies safe and regulate the population. So that's the fine line. We need to be kept we need to be kept safe from people who are trying to overregulate us. Let's give an example of sensible laws. For example, a law passed in my first term of Parliament which allowed access to abortion clinics for women without being harassed by people who are virulently opposed to abortion. Now, whether you agree with abortion or you don't agree, that's fine. Whatever you believe is fine. Just don't make it applicable to anyone else. If I believe something, and I think you should believe it too, and if you don't believe it, I'm going to do what I can to harm you or stop you from doing what you want to do because I believe you're wrong. And so that law was passed to say to people, stop doing this. You must stop harassing people. Without, if you don't believe in abortion, that's fine. Don't have an abortion. But don't stop someone else from having the abortion, even if you disagree with it. As a doctor, you might then say, well, listen, I don't agree with abortion, but you're pregnant, I'm not the one dealing with it, I will send you to someone who wouldn't have any problems. That means that I serve you while at the same time not getting myself involved in something I don't agree with. So it's the freedoms of myself and of my patient to do what is needed for them and for myself. That, I think, is useful. Police. The police are essential. They're often maligned because they're causing difficulties for people who are having a hard time. And I think we treat our police very badly. I don't think we pay them enough. Certainly, we don't pay our firefighters enough. We don't help them when they have problems enough, all the PTSD they've got and the stresses they've got. We don't pay them enough to look after us. And we demand they go off and harass people. For example, take Indigenous people driving in the communities and they haven't got a license. You're driving again without a license, we'll take you to prison now. How have we helped that person and the community? We haven't. So we've got to, I think, look at serving the people and do our laws service. Now, was it last year, I said in Parliament, I said, members, look back on the 30 years in the past. All of the legislation passed in our government over 30 years. Are we any better off? Is the cost of living any better? Is violence in the streets down? Is the cost of a house coming down to buy? Are we having more peace in our area? We're not. So that means all those 30 years of legislation, how have we actually served the people we're supposed to serve? And I would say no.
As one of the legislators within the state of Western Australia, are there any targets to deregulate? Because in theory you are a legislator, one who legislates, but as a default with that mindset you are always creating new legislations. So is there as a thought process, if you create less legislation or merge few or get rid of the ones which are defunct or not being used, so that you can achieve the idea of what you talked about, the government, in which the government is focusing on regulating the organizations, not the people?
There's a theory which states that the more regulations we have, the more complex our society gets, the more breakable it is. And I think it's true that we're coming to that point where we've got so much over-regulation that our society is breaking. I think everyone can see that. So should we then cut back on regulation? Absolutely we should. The legislation we've got, we had the evidence bill last week in Parliament, 440-odd clauses, that much legislation to get through. With all that might be done and couldn't be done, and be careful. You wonder, if we're required to tell the truth and treat people with kindness, do we need 440-odd clauses to help people find a good way of actually determining what is evidence, what's not? I think we make it very complicated. I think we are regulating people because we're trying to account for everyone's behaviour. And it'd be far simpler if we made smaller government, less regulation, and allowed the people to determine what is needed. For example, the Swiss approach there with their cantons and with their referenda and with their votes, and what are we as a people going to do? And see what the people need, what people want. Government, I think, should step back a bit and let businesses work. For example, we're looking here again at hemp as a product. Now, hemp has been used for thousands of years. Great. The cottonized hemp, the shirts you can make with that, beautiful silk-like shirts, $200 a shirt from hemp. Or you can turn them into pet bedding. Same product, very different outputs. Multi-billion-dollar business. You could actually, the ADF is using hemp and carbon fiber to make bomb-proof covers for motors. Great. Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we making this billion-dollar business part of everyday life? Well, because we're afraid of THC. Yeah, okay. How many people has THC killed in the last 20 years? What, none? All right. So why are we stopping the use of hemp? Hemp, what would it then do? Protect the waterways, give microclimate change. We could use the hemp to build houses, to help the indigenous people to build their own homes. We could make ships with this, which wouldn't set off electromagnets. Why don't we do that? We're frightened of THC. And yet, at the same time, in Western Australia alone, on an annual basis, 1,000 people a year die due to the properly prescribed medications that have been properly administered by doctors. And no one cares.
Can you elaborate the idea of individual liberties and individual freedoms? And then you spoke at the the value for the firearms as well. And you spoke about liberties and freedoms. And could you take the Firearms Act as an example to explain the idea of individual liberties and freedoms?
Okay. I think my ideal is I want to, without being sexist, I want to be a free man in a free country. Mm-hmm. If I was a woman, I'd say I want to be a free woman in a free country. Mm-hmm. And we're not free. We're very much constrained and constricted. And what is freedom? It's the freedom to do what I want, when I want, how I want, provided no one else is harmed. Mm-hmm. So it's having respect for someone else while I do what I want to do. So it's a mutual approach there. So if I want to play my loud music at 3 o'clock in the morning, I should be able to do that, but maybe not over a boombox spreading out over the neighborhood, maybe headphones on there. So that's what I can do. I must be aware of the rights of other people. I'm a rabid anti-smoker, but I would also say rabid anti-smoker. If you want to smoke a cigarette, that's fine, you do so, but don't blow your smoke into my face. Mm-hmm. So freedoms. So there's, without regulations, without laws, we have anarchy. And then the strong survive and the weak go by the board. So we need some form of legislation, some form of regulation that allows us to live as we wish without harming other people. Now, the firearms, good case in point. Do we absolutely need an AK-47 to feel like a strong, free human being? No, we don't. You're not going to hunt with that. And do we want to say, hunt meat? By all means. If you want to cull feral animals, so the foxes, when they're ravaging the newborn lambs, should do that. Feral cats, by all means. Do I then need a machine gun, a 50 mil machine gun, to shoot, say, a pig? I don't. So common sense needs to be there. Now, after the Port Arthur horrors, controlling weapons, I think, is a good idea. By the way, I use the word weapon because I was trained as a soldier. Mm-hmm. People say, oh, you shouldn't use the word weapon. And you're right, it's a firearm. It is actually also a weapon. Let's be honest about it. It's used to kill. But at the same time, it's also a good sport. Target shooting, clay pigeon shooting, a lot of people have fun of that. Our soldiers, ex-military people, when they come out, they actually have fun in actually shooting weapons at a target. It feels nice. I love weapons. What I don't like is the damage caused when people are hit with them, unless, of course, they're my enemy in a war. That's another matter altogether. Mm-hmm. So it's really about finding that balance. Why does the government want to take firearms off the streets? Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, they're not on the streets. They're locked away in safes. Mm-hmm. The ammunition is kept separately. The bolts are kept separately. So when they say taking it off the streets, they're actually getting an emotive word out there. Yeah. There's weapons on the streets and you are at risk. Mm-hmm. Well, that's where the government controls the narrative and lies to us. Mm-hmm. Those who want to use weapons freely, as in sports shooting at the clubs there, it's a great way of getting your stress out, of finding some kind of pleasure. It's very nice. If you're a sports shooter, you want to practice, you want to do that freely. If you're a farmer and you want to control your grounds, by all means, you need this. If there's an animal which needs to be euthanized, it's nice to have the weapon there on the spot rather than letting the poor animal die in pain. These are useful things, but the government wants to control us. Now, then other people say, why? Why do they want to control our weapons? Why aren't they controlling the weapons of the criminals? And they're not doing that. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the criminals are the ones who are going to be actually having the unrestrained access to weapons and hiding it from us and using it, of course, to kill, to maim, to rob, to do violent things. Criminals do this. And so the legislation was actually missing the point entirely, punishing those who are law-abiding and leaving those who are not law-abiding free to do what they want. So the wrong people have the freedom.
Mm-hmm. And then going further in the same example is that we have given, in a way, it's intending to give freedom to people who should not be given the freedom, the exceptions of the society, but the mainstream who probably are law-abiding or have that common sense that I don't need an AK-47 to shoot feral cats or foxes. How can these things be opened up to the public? How can these conversations in more longer form? Why the narrative has to be small and short so that it impacts and creates an emotive response rather than let's put the case out there and let's debate openly on that, on both sides of the argument.
That would be lovely. There's two problems with that. One, the general public has not been trained in critical thinking. Education is designed to get people working in the mills, regurgitate information, and just be a good person and follow the law. And the other side there is that the mainstream media doesn't tell the truth. It gives a very biased view, often bought by the same transnational organizations which control what the people are allowed to see and hear. It's propaganda writ large, actually. You look at the paper now, the West, and you'll find headlines there which are, they're saying things like brutal attack on grandmother, horror finding. They're sensationalizing. Whereas what's good happening in our society doesn't really get a mention. And also, the points of view that I've brought out, I've spoken about many, many things. Has the mainstream media paid much attention to me? All they've tried to make of me is, they make fun of me as the pot doctor, someone who wants to legalize illicit drugs. And that's all they want to, the message they put out is anything but the message I do put out. What is my message? Well, it's wellness, physical, mental, social, financial wellness, and social justice. And have they mentioned a word of that? They haven't. So what we don't have is a narrative in the population, not able to talk about it. They look about the sports from last night or the television, but not about stuff that matters because, bread and games will keep you out of politics. And the mainstream media supports that by putting their particular point of view out there to support or indeed not support the government.
Is it not the same idea of having, a hypothesis, I think, the more sports you have, so between the whole old school idea of, large places to run these events, and when the king is doing something dodgy, it'll create a whole coliseum of events so that the mainstream or the majority of the population is busy. So the more the hand is a dodgy hand, you have to do more sports or more coliseum-like activities. Case in point, Victoria. So that's the sports capital of the country. So because the highest debt Victoria has. So do you see that the old school mindset of ruling the minority to ruling the majority still exists and persists?
It's an ancient truism for politics, bread and games, circuses and games, to keep the population occupied. If you ask someone just now, who's your local member of parliament, most people wouldn't know. If you ask them, what did your team score last weekend, most people could tell you. We've been divided, but because we're not tribal anymore, we've now got the tribalism with the sports clubs. Or indeed the national games, the state games, the Olympics. My tribalism is showing out there because I am now identifying with this particular group. I'm a netball fanatic, or I'm an ice hockey fanatic, and I know all the stats. And the office talk is going to be around about what are the results, who is your favourite player, what's going to happen with a new manager. People talk about that, but when they talk about, for example, let's say, how much should the churches not be allowed to pay tax, it doesn't come across at all. How much should we be wondering about, should we be uncoupling from the USA as a matter of principle, because they are not an ally that we want to be defending? No one talks about that, really. It's kind of, oh, no, we shouldn't mention that. And what do we not talk about? Sports. We don't talk about politics. We don't talk about religion because, oh, that might offend people. We need to talk about politics because we are being led down the garden path. And I can foresee that the geopolitics is going to demand that at some stage soon, we are going to be asked to go to war. And I don't think we should. I think the very concept that there's stuff going on that demands that we send our men and women into battle to kill or be killed for some nebulous political idea, I think is abhorrent. Especially not supporting a failing empire which has got the moral values which we do not as Australians support. The racism that's going on there, the misogyny which is going on there, the separating the country into two parts there where they don't speak to each other, the polarity in politics, the massive poverty that large parts of the population have, and we're going to make you even more poor by taking away your rights to stamps, to healthcare. We're watching this happen in real time. And we should be saying to there's that country there, you do not mirror our values. You're not part of our family. We're not going to work with you. You want to go that way? Go that way. That's your country. You look after yourself. But we, as an Australian, we ought to be saying, we are different. We are Australian. This is not who we are. And we should come together as a people of Australia and not as vassal state to the US.
Coming back on the conversation which you talked about or hinted towards is critical thinking and education. And how is in your observation, the quality of education in terms of creating young people with high critical thinking, and what do you see the going downward trend of the literacy and numeracy scores across OECD countries?
I think it's a tragedy. First of all, I've got to say that the teachers I know and the teachers I've come across have been excellent people. Their trouble is that they're being hampered by bureaucracy, they're being hampered by KPIs, which have no relation at all to actually teaching children. And their desire to actually pass on knowledge to children is actually being stymied. So they're leaving in droves, I think, and it's a shame because excellent people are no longer teaching our children. I think there's some fundamental flaws in our education system. In its 19th century, let's teach children to read and write so they can go into the mills and become workers. We're not teaching children to actually use their brains. Now, in the old days, I'm talking here a previous century, a university was a place for actually allowing the brain to discover. So it wasn't about becoming a writer or studying ancient Greek or about the history. It was about educating the mind to be an elevated mind, to be able to look at things and have a broader understanding. One of my favorite pictures was in the tower at Dundee University in Scotland. There was a Dr. Maxwell, I've forgotten his first name, Dr. Maxwell, M-A-L-L-B, and then after that it wrote, Man of Letters. And I thought, yes. And this is a man who, had he been alive and had I been invited to sit with him, would have entertained with his knowledge about the trees, about the wildlife, about the politics, about the nature of the history. And I would have sat there entranced, just listening to a man of letters. Do we have that now? Well, we do, but it's not nearly as valued. We've come into a different society now. We've moved on. We're now in an age where AI is ruling us. And the idea of actually being menial workers or remembering things by rote is no longer valid. We need to be aware of the change in our society. And one of the things that we're just not teaching anyone at all is how to communicate. For example, if you want to understand what has been said to you, it's not about hearing the words. It's about listening to the context and putting it together and assessing from body language, from all that we see, what actually has been said. Who are you? And in my interaction with you, coming to an understanding. That. Now, if we don't know that, how can the teachers teach our 4-year-olds? Because that's when it needs to start. A lot of our communication is, I'm right, here's an arrow, and I duck behind the parapet, and you can shoot your arrows, you're not going to hit me because I'm right. Therefore, by definition, you're wrong. Wow. I mean, what we ought to be doing is exchanging information so we can begin to reform our ideas. That I don't agree with you, but tell me why you think that. Maybe I can share that point of view. We don't have that. So rather than actually learning by rote, we should maybe be learning how to learn. And then looking at a library as something that you really want to go into. And I think, because I used to tell my children, I used to say, listen, reading and writing, when you read, when you can learn to read, every secret in the world is open to you. Everything. And this is such a gift to be able to read. Right. But nowadays, children don't even learn how to write properly because it's all typewritten. Well, I can see that. But the beauty of actually having good penmanship, which I don't have, by the way, is lost. So we need to be learning how to learn and encouraging inquiring minds, which means we don't shut a mind down, learn this, we open a mind up and says, what do you want to learn? That would be a whole different way of learning. I'd look forward to it myself.
And in terms of the failed or functioning or dysfunctioning bureaucracy, in the whole spectrum of functioning, dysfunctioning, and failed bureaucracy, and one of the mathematicians who observed across, he says, "Show me your incentives, I can tell you what behaviors people have."
Right.
So incentives drive behavior. Bad incentives, bad behavior. So if the incentives are to tick box those matrices for each schools and each teachers, and that'll drive a behavior towards finishing those matrices. So how do you see that kind of a trend? What's your observation within the education space that incentives drives behaviors?
I think what I'm seeing in schools right now is children being sent unprepared into school by parents who haven't taught them themselves. I think I see a failure in general of parenting to teach children the very basics of life: respect for each other, love, kindness, sharing, the basic language skills. They're plumped in front of a television and they're not really getting read to, they're not really getting the kind of upbringing that was normal before the internet, before television. So teachers are having to help the children catch up. Also, there's a behavioral issue here, that there's a confrontation with teachers rather than seeing teachers as someone to be highly respected. Mm-hmm. In my childhood, teachers were, they were, and in the Chinese context, in the Asian context, you bow to teachers because they bring your child into adulthood. And that's missing as well. So the fundamentals of education, I think, aren't there. And you begin to wonder, if I look at parents who homeschool their children, in 3 hours they can get what a child will learn in a whole day. Mm-hmm. And they'll learn a lot easier, with more facility and more interest, more acute. For example, I loved the children with showing them a telescope and then showing the Galilean moons around Jupiter. Mm-hmm. Like, you look at this, and then look beyond and wonder about the universe. And I wonder what matter is made of. Mm-hmm. And you can see the questions coming. Tell me more. Mm-hmm. Rather than you will learn what a proton is and how. Let's understand that there's a lot to be discovered, and it's fascinating. Mm-hmm. So this is where I'd like our children to go in education. Get the curiosity going, and understanding also that all our children are different. Some have got skills in this area, some have got skills in another area, mm-hmm. and it's all good skills. Let's encourage, rather than actually making all children fit one size, put them into a box. Here we are, off to the employment market. Mm-hmm.
And AI has been being introduced at all the levels. Many high schools are trialing AI at some level. And how do you see in the new age of AI being able to think like a junior executive in an organization, somebody who's doing research at the university level, the role of that hard work of, as an intern, I was given a task and I would go back and then read about it and find right answers, go back to the manager, and he will tell me that this is wrong, that is right. That mentorship and that coaching by your seniors, if the frontline work is not there anymore or can be taken care of, how do you create that idea of critical thinking, or how do you train your brain to know what is right or wrong? Because you can prompt an AI and it will give you an answer. But if you don't know what is right, how can you re-prompt and then fine-tune the idea of prompting an AI?
Okay, vested interest here. I love AI. Mm-hmm. I think it's... but mind you, I said the same thing about the internet. Mm-hmm. And to see it turned in from a wonderful tool of finding information to being a way of criminality and shutting people's minds. Mm-hmm. I think the AI, the internet has gone a very dark path. I wonder if AI could do the same. You could fundamentally mistrust AI and say, well, the big... the vested interests are controlling AI for their own purposes, and they may want to actually make us unnecessary, to cut the population, to make them richer and not feed the unwanted mouths. There's fear about AI, and I think justifiable fear too. So I think it's incumbent upon us as a people to become very AI aware and to take charge of the AI in our lives, mm-hmm. rather than be bound by it. Now, when I was a boy in school, we weren't allowed to use calculators because we must do things with your mind, mm-hmm. do the calculations. Stupid. The calculator can do it so much quicker. I need to know the process and what that means and understand the structure of this equation here, rather than actually struggle with it. Was it carry the one or carry the two, type of stuff. So I think we ought to be aware of the potential risks, but also be aware of the potential beauties of AI, and that once you control AI, then AI isn't controlling you. Mm-hmm. So I think we need to grasp that opportunity and make sure it stays within our hands and not abrogate that into the hands of those who may mean ill with us. For example, Grok. I saw reports that Musk has seen an output from Grok which didn't appeal to his political leanings. Oh, we'll fix that, he says. Hang about. So are we having a reasoning machine here which can look at the pros and the cons and give a balanced view? Or are we getting something which is skewing information to say what I wanted to say in this direction here, and then you think everything that comes from this is true? There we have a problem. So I think we need to educate our young people to be aware of the risk and to detect it, recognize it, and stand against it. But we must use it.
One of the observations I was looking at, there are council elections in the state right now, and I was observing quite a few bios of people who are running for council elections, and one can read and tell, they are giving same answers or similar bios across the spectrum. So, which means if AI is the one they're prompting and then get an answer, so the answer will be same all the time because the master machine is the same machine. So everybody thinking brain is similar in the end, as AI gains a lot of information from everybody and people start using it as a default and don't start thinking on their own. And that's where critical thinking comes into play.
I think the trick with AI is not to ask it a simple question. You're using it like using your iPhone, for example, to take pictures of cats. Nice, but that's not what the iPhone has got more computing power than the lunar landing module in the 60s. It's a powerful tool. AI is exactly the same. I love using AI, but you've got to learn how to prompt properly to give the answers that you're seeking for, not the answers you want to have. So this is, again, the tools, we need to learn how to use them properly. How can I explain this? It's like, one of my sport arts was Japanese sword fighting, kendo and iaido. And I love the beauty of the Japanese sword. Now, if you see that and respect it, it's a beautiful tool to behold. If you don't understand the tool, you just cause damage. So it's not the tool itself, it's how you wield it that makes a big difference.
In terms of the legislative powers in the state, where do you see the biggest focus should be for the state towards the same objective, what you talked about earlier, that the role of the government is to deregulate people and regulate the organizations?
That is a very deep question. We've got three levels of government: the federal, the state, and the local government. The further devolved we are away from the people on the ground, the less we respond to the people's needs. I think we should have very strong local government, and we should actually encourage that. I am not a great fan of the federal government because I don't really see them in touch with the people. So I would be encouraging the federal government to pull back from a lot of its tasks and to abrogate a lot of the work they're currently doing to the states, for the individual states. For example, we spoke earlier about our relationship to the US. Now, I think very much that the eastern states are very focused on trans-Pacific understanding with a failing empire, and they're working to work with the current regime. Whereas we in Western Australia, we're actually in Asia. We're in the same time zone as China. Our closest neighbours are Indonesia. How are we doing with our local neighbours here? So I would like to have less of an influence from the US and more of an influence with Asia. Then you might ask, how are we doing with the Pacific Islands? Are we actually focusing on their needs and how we can work with them together, rather than actually wondering about how we can help America make China unhappy, who are then working on the Pacific Islands for their purposes? So we're not actually getting a unified, harmonious response in the world because our federal government, I think, is not focusing on us. They're focusing on peripheral benefits outside and looking at becoming a vassal state of a failing empire, which is not serving us. The $400 billion for the AUKUS agreement, I think, is entirely improper. And that's just one example of it. So the state level government that I am part of, I would like to see us as a state government recognizing that we serve the people best by stopping the clutter of regulations and freeing up the legislation to do what the people need rather than serving the needs of the transnational corporations. And this means that we need to look at taxing those companies properly to supply the needs of our state, and that our vast resources serve us, not the transnational corporations. And that, in this mining state, I think our state government should take the lead on that.
And in terms of one is in that hypothetical, when you were talking about taking those powers back from federal to the state, is one is defense you talked about. What other things you want to focus on if in that hypothetical scenario that state should control its majority of its affairs?
I think we need good relations with the nations around about us. And I think our state premier needs to be more out there working as an ambassador, if you like, with our neighbours near and far. I would like to see our education system, for example, reaching the same level as the Asian nations. Look at the mathematics in China, for example, far surpasses ours. I think we should be part of that. You mentioned earlier the AI. I think we should be working to develop chip technology, maybe with China, maybe with Korea, to develop such facilities ourselves and control that rather than be controlled by someone else's AI. I think we should look at the environment, how we manage that and do it locally. We have lost 70% of our vegetation in Western Australia because we've allowed the land to be raped. I think we ought to be looking after, this is our land, our beautiful land. We look after this because we've got generation after generation to come after us that needs to have the land in pristine condition. So we should do that. And the tourists will come in and see that. So we've got this geopolitical understanding. We're not going to attack you. We have a beautiful country. Come and see us, trade with us, and then we've got a harmonious relationship with those who are in our area. This is something that our state government should be, I think, looking at. The federal government doesn't seem to be quite so interested in that for us.
From the point of view of the next generation of economic reforms, one is, you talked about the taxes. What other economic reforms do you think could create a bit more wealth for everyday Australians or West Australians?
You don't ask shallow questions, do you? Okay. First of all, there's two major competing philosophies just now, Keynes and Friedman.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a doctor. I know nothing about politics, about economics. I'm wondering why we're not looking at what Marx actually wrote. We see what Lenin and Stalin made of that, but what did Marx actually say? I think we're looking at bringing together the good parts and various economic ideas to find that which helps us in this area, which may not work for another area, but will work for us. So this idea of just Friedman and Keynes is all bad, there's good and bad in each of these philosophies. I think we ought to look and see with an open mind what works for us. Maybe we need a fourth major economic innovation. Maybe that's needed. But if we're keeping it to simple terms, I would say the following. If we wanted to address the institutionalized poverty of our state, the first thing we should stop doing as a state is taxing people unnecessarily. Stamp duty. Why? I buy a house. Why should I pay the government stamp duty, a tax on the house I've paid with my own money? What have you done to deserve that, state? What about capital gains tax? What about the institutions taking money off someone who has died?
Payroll tax?
Payroll tax, same thing. If we were to have a fair tax system, now I've emphasized the word fair because at the moment it's definitely unfair. If we had a fair tax system, we could do what the Bulgarians did after the communism failed and have an across-the-board flat rate 10% tax. Maybe a 15%, just keep it like Singapore or Hong Kong. If the transnationals paid 15% on all of their income, would we, maybe after their operating expenses, of course, maybe they wouldn't have to spend so much on their accountants, and maybe we get an awful lot more money coming into the system. Now, I've worked this out, and yes, we would. We would actually have a very much more fair system where the ordinary person is paying 15%. I think it's a lower poverty level I wouldn't have taxed at all. But if you're earning enough to actually put food on the table, then I think it's fair to pay a certain amount of tax. We can give back. And I think we should. But what is lacking just now is the vast resources of the of the transnational companies which are not being tapped just now, and that would make a huge difference. So if we cut the unnecessary taxes, allowed proper taxation of the ultra wealthy, I think we would actually have a very fair system. And it's not like in the old days back in Europe or England when they had about 96% tax on the very wealthy at some stage, a ridiculous number. Let's not do that, because then people say, listen, I'm out of here, I'll earn my money elsewhere. Let's have a sensible, fair tax for everybody, one flat rate, and that should fit all of our needs. I think our cost of living would go down, houses would become more affordable, and we'd be able to do those things with our resources that currently we can't. What's your thoughts on that?
It's not my interview, but yes, I think we can do more activities to create more wealth, because there is enough. The whole value chain of digging out dirt and then doing something with it, and can be done within the boundaries. So the more you value add here, the more value you create for the locals.
Oh, now you're speaking like Greg Copley. Do you know Greg Copley?
Probably have heard the name.
He's a wonderful man, actually. One of the spook, if you like, in Washington. Lovely books, 37 books. Greg Copley. Highly recommend that people read his books. But he gives an annual talk to WA, actually, well, to the world. And one of the things he said to us was exactly this. Why are we taking our iron, for example, sending it to China, who then add value and sell it back to us? Why aren't we adding value to the things here?
Yeah.
And that makes eminent sense.
And then you can become you can control the IP, you can control the technology, you can control, and they can be the best at. And you can use your universities for more research and development rather than doing research for somebody else.
And then keeping it ourselves. Wi-Fi was developed in Australia, and then we exported that, and they took it out of our hands, and we've got nothing. Do you know
my suits, merino wool, but the mills are in the UK.
Oh dear.
So the wool goes from Australia to a different country,
hemp.
Mill, yeah.
Hemp industry. We can't process it here. We get the processed hemp from China. I mean, for the love of God, that's holy. Let's do it here, because we can then export high quality products, and then we would actually be in a better situation ourselves. You know what we don't have in Western Australia is actually a parliamentary budget office. We can't put these to the PBO to be assessed for the actual value. So we can put the ideas out and say, oh, no, we're going to do it the way we want. And we haven't got any control over what's being thought.
Like Productivity Commission.
Yes, indeed. So what we should maybe do is open up the ideas. Let's look at these ideas, let's assess them, see where the benefit to us comes in, rather than actually just crossing our fingers that your decision's the right one.
What do you think about the culture wars and then, easy way out, dividing the people in simple, easy boxes, and using the same language of some other country used to bring it here? How do you see culture wars being played, and through the media?
It's a great way of maintaining power by dividing the people against each other. I think it is antithetical to harmony, and it is doing us a great disservice. I look at culture as not a culture war. And when I'm talking at, say, citizenship ceremonies, what I'm saying to the people is something along the lines of, welcome. You are a beautiful thread, and all of these beautiful threads of different colours are coming together to form a tapestry, which is so beautiful. If we had a tapestry of one colour, it would be nice, but it could be better. It's the variety coming together, that we come together to form one tapestry of wonderful shape and form.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not subsuming your culture into mine. I'm actually absorbing your culture into something better. Yes, so no culture wars. I think we need to work together and appreciate the beauty in what we all bring.
And in terms of the media, and there is slowly building up the other sources of media. One is the mainstream media, which creates and then uses more clickbait kind of a mindset. And then, as you talked about, the newspaper had the headings to have more people reading the newspaper. So what do you see on a timeline, that how long does the mainstream media has to evolve to the new form of open dialogue, have long-form conversation, to at least distill the idea, and people who want to tune into you, they will tune into you?
One of our great enemies of democracy is the mainstream media.
That's the fourth pillar?
Yes. The thing about this is that the mainstream media is bought and paid for and purports to inform the people, but it actually only half informs. So we're only getting we're getting a biased reporting. We're getting a lot of non-reporting, and it's encouraging people to think in a certain direction, emotion-laden, but absent some of the important facts. So being able to create a sensible view of the world simply by digesting the mainstream media is simply not possible. Mm-hmm. How long will it take? Well, I sense there's a kind of a fear. There's a kind of a sense of impending doom in that the people can be oppressed for only so long before they crack and say, no, there's going to be violence. Mm-hmm. We're seeing an increase of unrest internationally, but also within our nation as well. And at that time, I think there's going to be an attack against the institutions, whether it's justified or not. Can I trust this institution? And increasingly, people cannot trust the institutions. They don't have faith in politics. They don't have faith in the media, rightly so. They don't have faith in the police. They don't have faith in those who are there to actually help. Mm-hmm. And as a result, there's an increasing disengagement, disenchantment with the structure of the system. And that must lead to chaos, must. And I think the time is near. I think unless we grab things by the scruff of the neck and lead into a better future, ever-advancing civilization, as I like to call it, with a new way of thinking, a new way of behaving to each other, in a new direction into something, a great and glorious future, the beacon on the hill. Mm-hmm. If we're not doing that, then we're going to implode, I think. Mm-hmm. And that's one of my fears. So I think we need to call people to stand with us as we bring the people to move towards a better future, rather than actually dissolving, dividing, causing discord. Mm-hmm. All of that is useful for, I think, the people who want to break us down, but it's not what we as a people need. Mm-hmm. So I would be encouraging people to think differently.
During elections and leading up to elections, political parties give a lot of promises in terms of cash throwaways, which is, they are given right now or given post when they come in power. So how do you see those kind of throwaways? Are they beneficial for a functioning democracy?
No, it's a sordid attempt to manipulate the people. If you listen to my budget reply speech this year, and if you want a good sleep, please do that. But you will hear me praising the budget as a good budget as far as budgets go, but. Mm-hmm. And then I'll launch into the areas where it's failed us. The budget tells us what the government wants us to hear, but what it doesn't mention, we don't hear about. So we don't realize it's not there. Mm-hmm. It's a master stroke of misdirection. Promising, we're going to build a school, we're going to build a bridge here, we're going to employ 200 people there, vote for us and this will happen. Vote for them and you'll die in poverty. This is classical politics which brings us into disrepute. And I think we shouldn't do that. I think it's lamentable. Mm-hmm. What do we need to do is actually listen to what is needed and to bring our resources together to deliver what is needed. Mm-hmm. For example, we've got the Burswood racetrack. The government says, is our mandate now? Nonsense, it wasn't a mandate. They threw that in as a sop to certain people. I haven't spoken to a single person who wants to spend $217 million minimum on a Burswood racetrack. But we're going to do that rather than spending the money on, say, healthcare or aged care or childcare. But we're not doing that. So we're wasting $217 million. Why? The movement of King Eddie's Hospital, it was planned for near Charlie's. 2 years of planning out the window, suddenly over 2 weeks, no, we're doing it elsewhere. Why? Who's profiting from this? The question really ought to be who benefits? Cui bono? Who benefits from this? And we don't know this. The 5 reasons they gave, Paul Murray in the West, adequately demolished that argument. All of those arguments were actually incorrect. So someone somewhere is benefiting from this, and we don't know. How can we have trust in a government which is actually not showing us exactly what's going on and is hiding information from us. So people are very angry with that. Now, so the money is going somewhere, but it's not coming to us. Being told how well we've done in the budget. Well, actually, over the years, it turns out that despite having great financial results, the debt has gone up. Why? I mean, if you've got debt and you've got good income and the debt goes up, my wife would be saying, "What are you doing?" I wouldn't have a very peaceful time. But we're cool. No, we believe you. The debt's gone down. It hasn't gone down. It's gone up. Something somewhere is rotten. So playing with money and, as you mentioned earlier, this dividing people so we're not working as a unified people to stand for what's right, that's working very well against us. So I'm not a fan of that.
And what's a good pedigree or a good mix to create a good political leader?
Someone who's not involved in politics from the very get-go. Someone who's lived. Someone who's had to earn a living outside of politics. Someone who's experienced life and loss as a citizen in the economy, in life. If you go from university to becoming a staffer to becoming a politician, you haven't really understood what life is about. We need real people in real life offering real solutions to our real problems.
In conclusion, I want you to talk about couple of statesmen or stateswomen you look up to and elaborate why your liking towards them.
Right. Statespeople that I look up to. I think first and foremost Nelson Mandela. Someone who suffered, who came out of horrible conditions and didn't seek revenge, but sought the benefit. Now, his mission has been handed over to people who do. So, but what Nelson Mandela did was wonderful. I think we should copy that. Who else would be a statesman that I would heartily recommend? Do you know, I think Julia Gillard is grossly underrepresented. I think she did a lot more than people recognise, and I would like to see her do more in our nation. She represented a change, a move away from the male-dominated mindset into a new way of thinking. And while I may not agree with everything she says, I like the way she said it. Who else would I want to who would I want to emulate? Now, don't take this the wrong way. I love Barack Obama, although he was part of the system. When he came into power, I thought, yes, now there's going to be a change. And then my horror when I saw there was no change. But the way he went about saying it, projecting it, was wonderful. So if you were to use his skills...
Oration skills?
Oh, yes. If you were to use those skills, but with the mindset of serving the people more practically, I'd love to do that.
Lovely. Thank you for your time, Brian.
It's a real pleasure. You ask questions which made me think deeply, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you for being very thoughtful and taking your time to respond and being truthful.
Pleasure.
Thank you.